This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Jamie Janelle has been busy in healthcare administration in a sleepy Las Vegas during this pandemic, where she manages to find the time to write and promote her book entitled The Secret Society of the Scorpion Sisters.
For as long as I can remember, since childhood. I love to write short stories, poems. I have a ton of that, even as an adult, that I continue to write. So even if it's not being published, I still enjoy to write. I came from a family of 5, single mother, revolving door of men. And this was just like a way to say, these are women who are avenging women who can't avenge for themselves. But through it all, find sisterhood, love, family, from themselves. And it's just very powerful. It just kind of illustrates the many facets that women have. The main character, Ace, comes from a mother who just really did not do a very good job parenting. And, I kind of relate to that. So basically, it's about a group of women who meet during group counseling, and together they decide that the justice system's just not doing its job, for lack of a better word. And so they decide that during the day, they're going to counsel women that are abused and do the normal jobs by day, but by night, they avenge those that can't avenge themselves. And in the process, they run a shelter called the House of Love and Hope. And they just meet some interesting characters, and the jobs that they have afford them an opportunity to come in contact with unsavory individuals that just really need to be punished. So basically, Ace is outraged. A male counselor comes in, and she's like, outraged, how could the COO of the organization decide that they want to put a male counselor in a shelter, an abuse shelter, where women are abused by men? And so she sets out to come up with ways that she can really get rid of him. And in the whole prospect of things, she realizes that he could really be a savior, and he turns out to be exactly what the women and children need without giving it all away, because they need to see that, there are really good men out there. And so throughout the story, they each have a little bit of hang-up that's going on that somewhat resolves itself by the end of the book, but some things keep lingering so that you kind of really want to figure out what happens next. Throughout the book, it comes to find out that Maven, the character who is now the counselor for the shelter, really has some strengths that we all need to see in men. Sugar, she's the mothering, loving woman of the group. She might be able to go out at night and avenge men in really pretty bad ways, but she doesn't want to say a curse word. She's just really super sweet. And they need her. She's kind of the glue that keeps them all together. Pepper's sassy. She's struggling with her sexuality in this book. She's the sassy, street smart one, kind of the no-nonsense. And Trick, she brings a little bit of sex to everything she does. I describe her as a walking, talking orgasm, because women just kind of love to stare at her, and, men have their thoughts about her, but she turns out to be a very strong character in the book. And because each one of them are so different, like Ace is the smart one, they all use their strengths to really make great things happen. As crazy as it sounds, good things come of what these women do. So, sex is not such a bad thing. And I think they illustrate that in this book with the way that they love one another and the people that they come in contact with, the way they take care of these women. And I think each one of their strengths play into each other. So they help one another. They're like a family. You can find me on jamiejanelle.com. I kind of like put nuggets out there, and I talk about it on Facebook. I talk about it in writers groups. And just to kind of get the idea out there that this is something that I think women want to read. I think women like to read about women who are tough but soft and kind of win in the end.
All right. We all like to win in the end. Good suggestions there, Jamie, too. Thank you. In October 1977, Kimberly Penmorden's dad survived a storm, pounding waves, and a treacherous journey over the Alaskan tundra. And she tells the tale in her book, Through the Alaskan Darkness.
The inspiration for this particular story is my father. He was in the Navy, and on the side, he had a boat with long line fishing for halibut and crab pots, and he also used it to take his friends hunting on the other side of the island. This was out at Adak on the Aleutian Chain. And one time when they were out hunting, there was a storm kind of snuck up on them. It was expected, but it wasn't expected as soon as it happened. And the boat wrecked. The storm was considerably worse than expected, and the boat was lost in the storm. And the men, there were 5 of them in all, barely made it out. the waves were pushing the boat up against a cliff. And so they had to get off of the boat onto this cliff and climb the cliff to get up on level ground. One of the gentlemen, they thought that he had gotten off, but he had actually fallen back. And the first guys off of the boat were like already about halfway up the cliff, but he was down at the shore. And a couple of times the water just completely covered him up and they thought that he was a goner, but he made it all the way up. But of course, this was in October and things were starting to chill down a bit and everything, and everybody was soaking wet. And so they had to huddle around him for the night to try and keep him from getting hypothermia, which he did get, but they had to trek quite a distance to the search and rescue cabin stocked with food, and they had wood and everything, but they ended up having to stay there for about a week. My dad has been wanting somebody to write it for him for some time, and then one day I went up to him and I said, well, Dad, if you really want to write this down, I'll do it for you. And I thought it was just something that he wanted for the family. And when he read it, he said, damn, she can write. And he decided that he wanted it out there for the world, so he paid to have it published. Because of the social distancing and everything, I have 2 adult children, and we're kind of talking about putting it out on social media, but once things open up again, I'll be checking into book signings and things along that line. So
get in line, Kimberly. I hear you. As soon as this virus is over, these bookstores are going to be packed. Thank you. Listen closely to our next author, Deborah Polis, who's battling ALS, and it is affecting her voice. In spite of having difficulty as a child learning to read and do math, she taught elementary school for 27 years in Davis, California. She brings a unique insight into dealing with kids for parents and teachers in her book entitled The Conscious Teacher.
I was inspired to write the book when I was in my memoir writing group, and I was reading about my troubles learning to read and do math in elementary school, and I applied those lessons to my teaching, and the members of the group stopped me and they said, Debbie, this is too important. You need to stop and write a book for parents and teachers before it's too late. Before it's too late really got me because I have ALS, and I was diagnosed in 2006. So in 2014, time really was of the essence. Now I just hope I live long enough to see that if it is widely read. The subtitle of the book is What All Teachers and Engaged Parents Need to Know to Be More Effective. Almost every chapter has notes for parents. For example, parents must model the behavior they want from their child. You need to keep your voice calm, put the child in charge, don't reward bad behavior with attention. That's the only way to extinguish bad behavior. Have your child set behavior standards and consequences when they're not met, and have your child create and sign a contract agreeing to follow the behavior standards. I named the book The Conscious Teacher because I believe both parents and teachers must meet every kid on their own level so that they become happy, motivated, successful learners If a kid works below grade level, they become motivated to keep working and improve. If they're gifted, they become engaged rather than doing it with no effort. The whole class becomes a team. The kids create partnerships and help each other. It's about thinking outside the box, having the confidence to make decisions based on what teachers and parents know or learn about each child. That's what conscious teaching can achieve.
All right, Deborah, great job with this interview, and really best of luck with your book. Sometimes boredom can be a good thing, and proof of that is in the story behind our next book entitled Trust.
I'm April Caniff. I currently live in Virginia. I'm a full-time deputy sheriff and a member of the Virginia Air National Guard. And my inspiration for the book was actually just a little tidbit of a snapshot in my head that I couldn't get out while I was deployed in Afghanistan. The book is about corruption at every level between the police as well as the military and how the two of them intersect. When you've got members of the Air National Guard who are also members of the police department that deploy to areas where you can get opium and drugs and whatnot and put them in a position where they're able to distribute them on the streets, but also their position protects them, how do you find out and how do you stop it? Funny fact is, when I was deployed, I had a lot of friends that were law enforcement, and we'd all talk. And we were talking about, okay, if we were stupid, what would we do? And how could we get away with it? So we've got Master Sergeant Alex Thomas, who is a security forces enlisted person, and she's listed as the best of the best in her field. The members of her team are completely supportive of her, but when she gets back from a deployment from Afghanistan, she gets told by a general she's on a mission to train up some Boston police officers, but he doesn't exactly tell her what for. So we meet Jen, who is a Boston Police Department officer, and she is everything Alex is not. She is quick to draw. She doesn't follow operating procedures. She just goes on her gut and does what she has to do, but she's a good officer. And a half chance, they happen to meet at a bar and sparks fly. But once Alex realizes that Jen is going to be one of her trainees, she abruptly up and walks out. As the training persists, this group that has been brought together is put through utter hell. And it's not until they all figure out that they have to come together to beat their trainer that they finally start to become a team. As they become a team, they get a call from their chief of police, and it turns out that a bunch of their comrades have been shot in an ambush style from one of the gangs. They all go to the police department, and every single one of them has a member of their family or friends that have been shot or killed, to include the master sergeant. That's when they realize that the head of IA and narcotics was probably in on it. From there, they're running into roadblocks, sitting in a bar. When this guy walks up, Jen sees who it is, jumps up and starts beating him up, only to find out that this is the man that killed her wife 8 years ago. And he's there to tell them, it's my brother. This is what time he's meeting with some guy. He's in and over his head. At that point, they've got to figure out that they trust. They decide to check it out. That's where they get the confirmation. That's where they start to find tons and tons of opium, guns, ammunition being sold by the military to the local police, to the gangbangers, all orchestrated by the commander of the security forces unit at the base that Alex is assigned to. The funny part is I never intended to write a book. It was my wife who submitted it for me without telling me. I didn't think anybody would like it.
See, you don't know if you don't try. Thanks, April. And you won't know what's coming up if you don't come back after this very short break. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Thomas Hall worked for a defense contractor, retired in Henderson, Nevada, and decided to take up creative writing again for the first time since college. He likes crime fiction, so he decided to take a stab at it in his book entitled Hatteras.
I got a private investigator, his name's Lance, and he's kind of a stud, former Army Ranger, and he thinks he's funny, so there's some chuckles throughout the book. Gets involved in the good-looking lady, gets involved in her problems, which just escalate, Lots of twists and turns, but I like a fast-paced novel myself when I'm reading, like a lot of action, and my wife is always guessing what's going to happen next, so I try to make sure she couldn't do that when she finally read it.
So some really nasty mercenaries have arranged a smuggling in order to draw out a terrorist?
Yeah, well, there's multiple plots, but the basic is this lady gets in trouble by smuggling some people into the country, and it turns out they were bait to get a terrorist to expose himself so these mercenaries could grab him and get the $1 zillion bounty. And he gets involved because she's in trouble, and he actually finally enlists the help of this terrorist to bring it all down. Bad news for the terrorist, he ends up dead, but yeah, just to have to work with the guy, not something he wanted to do, but something he had to do. So I was always interested in what was going to happen next. I couldn't wait to start writing again. I didn't really plot it out real well. I know from my writing experience, you're supposed to do an outline and, get a thesis statement and all that. Well, I didn't do any of that. I just, got back on the computer and just started typing away and see what happens.
And then the story kind of revealed itself to you?
Yeah, I didn't put a lot of forethought into how it was going to end up. I just kind of went with it. And
No, a lot of writers say that. It's almost like you're possessed,
Yeah, I understand that now, but yeah, I had no idea where it was going either, really. But it was fun. Probably not the right way to do it, but it's the way I did it.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, I started a sequel to this one using a few of the same characters. People that have read it have asked me, when's the next one coming out? I did a Facebook post and an Instagram post, but I lined up a book signing with Barnes & Noble here locally. We're going to pause on that one because, well, the stores aren't open right now.
Yeah.
And once they do open, I wouldn't go into a crowded spot in search of a book. I just go online like everybody else does. So
Right.
I don't know when we'll do that. That was one thing I wanted to do around the country, wherever I visited. I wanted to do a book signing, and I started with Barnes & Noble. They were eager and acceptable, pick a date. So that's on the back burner now. But
I know, Thomas. So many plans on the back burner because of this pandemic, but it's not forever. Just remember that. Just try to remember that anyway. The name of our next book sounds like a great idea. Should have gone to Jamaica.
I am A. Phyllis Harris. I live in Orlando, Florida. I am still working as a information systems analyst. I wrote that book for therapy. Should have gone to Jamaica.
I kind of feel that way right now. Let's go.
Everybody should go.
Let's get out of here.
I wrote my first book when I was 7, and it was called Witch's Brew. And I did my first play in the 3rd grade, so I knew I had a knack for writing. But this book means a lot because it's about a woman who is writing a book about the things that are going on in her life at that time. A woman named Vanessa falls in love with a guy, and she's going through a interesting time. She married someone who decided they wanted to be with the same sex, and he married someone who was extremely abusive. He got married young, and he's made a decision to leave her, and Vanessa made a decision to leave him. Vanessa found out that her husband was with another man. She couldn't deal with it. Eric felt as though that he couldn't be with anybody else. And she had these personal problems. She found out she was adopted by her own father. She had many abortions. She was bipolar. She's just a very destructive person. And because she was that way, she took it out on the kids that her and Eric had. And she also told lots of lies about her first son, Stacy. Stacy's father was not the father that she told Stacy he was.
Does she ever go to Jamaica?
With her family. She goes to Jamaica with her family. And finally, when everything, calmed down. And Vanessa also found her spiritual side. She was always a person who prayed and went to church and things like that. But she also found out that, the mistakes she made, right? Some things that we just decide to do in the moment, affects everyone too. Those quick decisions, those quick knee-jerk reactions. So she learned, her little part in this play as well. So right now, I had scheduled something with Barnes & Noble, but then all this happened, so I have to rethink how I want to do this. There's a couple of Jamaican restaurants here, and I kind of want to do something there. It's a Jamaican place. It's wonderful food and wonderful people, and just kind of talk about my book there. And then also my cousin is a kind of sort of DJ in Atlanta, so she's been trying to help me promote my book as well.
All right, good enough, A. Phyllis Harris. Thank you. In a commentary on the molestation of children and those falsely accused, Our Broken Selves examines a very complicated issue.
Hi, I am C. Ross Adams. I live in Dallas, Texas. I am currently driving for Uber, and I was inspired to write because it felt like it was the right time. I have stories that I like to tell, and I feel like right now in this current setting, what we're going through gave me an opportunity to write. It's about an incident that happens in a small town involving a Little League team. The incident happens between a coach and one of his Little League players, and it explores what happens when people jump to conclusions, when it feels like something may have happened, but it didn't. And it also explores what those implications do to the family, to the community, and what people think of others when something happens.
Is this based on a true story?
There are some parts of it that I did use from my childhood, but the story is fictional. There's a Little League player. He's in a broken home. Both his parents don't show up to his baseball game, and he feels a little bit of jealousy when he sees other parents show up with their kids. And so he made up a story that his Little League coach molested him, and it wasn't true. However, it was true enough to where the Little League coach went to jail for it. There was a confession, and at one time the Little League player saw him naked and was able to use visual evidence to get it going so that he would be arrested. When I explore the story, it kind of goes into how that can convict or can help in the conviction of a person. But even if someone were to confess something, it's not necessarily a rightful confession. And it's also a story that runs in parallel with a preacher. The Little League team is kind of divided into Protestant group and a Catholic group. And he's more of a Protestant preacher. And his name is Brother Jay. And he kind of gives perspective on how we don't go deep enough into letting people know who we are or what's going on. And so that superficialness can cause a lot of complications along the way. And then one of the characters, in a kind of a balance of it all, was actually molested as a child, but he didn't really want anybody to know. And so it kind of gave a opposing viewpoint of some people who get molested and want something from somebody, and those that get molested and don't want anything. Parts of the story that are true was something that I experienced as well. Was I molested as a child? No, but I did witness it, and I think that was also kind of played into why I wrote this, to kind of release that.
Not an easy topic, C. Ross Adams. Thank you so much. So should I count how many authors talked about how frustrated they are by this pandemic? All right, I won't, but I'm going to ask you to focus on the writers who are finding ways to get their books noticed through social media. I hear you moaning already, but listen, you know somebody or somebody who knows somebody who may be willing to sit down with you and help you figure out Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. It's all we got right now. I mean, listen to the authors who are posting online about their book or sections of their book every day or week or whatever to draw attention. Some authors are reading or talking about their books on YouTube. Listen, you went to all the trouble to write your book. You can't just let it sit there, and you can't let this pandemic defeat you. Although, personally, I could write a book about the days where this whole coronavirus thing has really gotten to me. So we are all in the same boat. We're all frustrated, but we still have the Page Publishing Book Club, right? And every week, authors do have suggestions. Don't let this pandemic be the reason you give up on your dream, okay? Don't let coronavirus win. This too shall pass. I gotta go. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Catch you next time.